Before the world experienced multiple ends, before zombies roamed where people once stood, before bombs of epic destruction laid waste to all progress of humankind, there were signs. Many saw these signs, many more couldn't. Among those that did, only a select few could do anything about it. Some built themselves bunkers, some stocked up on essentials for survival. Fewer still may have just lucked out. Today, we'll attempt to discern one from the other, as we uncover the mysteries of Butcher Pete's. Welcome to episode 13 of the Untold Stories of Navezgane. In this series, we're going to explore and dissect the most interesting places in the default setting of 7 Days to Die. From mountaintop mansions to fortified factories, we're going to learn the stories of those who didn't make it. Just barely tucked away in the frigid north of Navezgane, just a brief drive south of Navezgane's high school and coliseum, one building stands out just a little from the rest for its height and interesting color. Butcher Pete's lives just across the street from Doggo's and PB Paper Mill, as well as sharing a parking lot with what appears to be a small vehicle depot of some kind. Perhaps trucks once pulled into this lot to drop off deliveries, but now an ambulance is left to rot at the dock. Another ambulance hides just beneath Butcher Pete's, parked between two gates connecting the small depot to the shop. This is only the first of the many we'll be exploring today. For, quote, simplicity, unquote, we're actually going to start at the small depot across from the namesake of this video. Just beyond the ambulance in horrible disrepair, parked next to a stack of body bags, we'll get to that, we can enter this structure through a doorway. And immediately things get just a little bit shady. All of the windows are hastily covered by tarps or sheets. And to our right we'll find the probable why. Just beyond the now rusting gate, a small operating table? A dim blue glow from a screen showing x-rays illuminates the rotting remains of some poor individual left here. A simple gurney and some rudimentary lab equipment is all that's left to remark upon, other than the select few zombies slumbering here. So, obviously, what? What's going on here? Why would an ambulance bring anyone here to Butcher Pete's? And why is this structure really here in the first place? Was Butcher Pete a doctor as a side hustle? That doesn't make much sense. And besides, a guy that goes by Butcher is the last person I'd want in charge of my health. Unfortunately, without any other clues to go off of for now, we'll descend a gurney-friendly walkway down to the lower gate, maneuvering past a large generator and hazardous waste. Stepping outside and squeezing past the other ambulance, we'll enter Pete's basement, and here things continue to surprise us. Down here, we'll find remains of the animated and inanimate variety amidst a healthy plethora of gear. Weapons, ammunition, armor, fuel, a generator, a makeshift chemistry station, medical supplies, food, tools, rotting corpses, body bags, toxic waste, everything you'd need to survive the apocalypse. Mildly eerily, however, the majority of bloody skeletal remains and filled body bags occupy the main storage room, surrounding a very secure crate. Were these, as well as the now zombies, people who once fought over these supplies? Were these residents? Customers? Or perhaps just lucky looters that managed to find themselves where supplies were when Navezgane became one of the last, quote, safe, unquote, bastions on Earth? It's still hard to say, so we'll shimmy our way up to the service ladder of a surprise elevator connected to the rest of the business and abode above. Ascending that ladder, we'll land in the attic of Butcher Pete's via a hole in the flooring above. The hole appears to have been intentionally designed, meaning somebody meant to keep this access of the elevator shaft a secret, but left it there should the need arise. In the attic, we're greeted by even more bloody skeletal remains, the abundance of which growing ever more concerning, as well as mannequins. Plain, white, dirty mannequins. Arguably worse than the corpses. Regardless, there's a slightly less secret hatch and ladder leading down. Descending it will land in a cramped and sparse walk-in closet, made all the more small by a large gun safe. Connected, an even more cramped bedroom, certainly for one. It appears this floor was where Pete resided. His dog still occupies the modest kitchen where we can find, oh great, more remains. This time on a table. Perhaps we don't read into that. Perhaps we just make another joke about how cramped it is up here for such a large building. I mean, look at this bathroom. Ugh. Quaint single-bedroom apartment for rent. Wonderful view and excellent use of the 600 square feet of space. $2,000 a month. Sorry, too real. Outside this quaint living space, we'll find a lengthy stairwell leading down to the second floor of this building where... Oh. Okay, I guess there's no more skirting around this, is there? A large dining table flanked by a dozen chairs, several bookshelves and drawers, and two oh-so-creepy skulls is littered with human remains. Well, mostly human remains. There does appear to be at least one animal in the mix. Yep. Bloody, torn apart, skeletal remains. Okay, so like cannibal cult? I'm leaning toward cannibal cult, to be honest. Oh, and below there's just like a regular shop that sold meat. Yeah, we get that. But back up here, what the hell was Pete up to? We could give him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he had mouths to feed, and he fed them from his stock of meat here until there was nothing left. Nothing but the zombies. Those who didn't make it. If that were the case, you can almost empathize with the decision to resort to cannibalism. It's horrible and terrifying, of course, but there are plenty of cases in real-world tragedy where it's become a last resort. I'd love for that to be the case, but that's almost certainly not the story being told to us here. Why would Pete have an entire floor of his home dedicated to this? A large, eerily decorated dining room with a restrictive elevator, and he clearly lived alone. There's hardly enough room to live in for just him and his dog. And the small depot across the way, unfortunately, I believe this has been going on here for some time. Allow me to explain. Before the veritable end of the world, Butcher Pete's was the best in Navezgane when it came to meat. Working directly with Bob's Boars, Pete sourced much of his product locally, and the small-town folk of Navezgane liked that. Pete was so successful with his business, in fact, he was able to expand. He had a small depot constructed in his backyard to bring fresh meat in by the truckload. He expanded his abode floor by floor, until he had enough room to live modestly on his own, while also housing an impressive dining space for guests, business associates, and meetings. Maybe he even rented it out as a conference room, some easy extra income. But pork wasn't the only thing that Pete built his fortune on. Most importantly, Pete catered to those with much darker, more taboo tastes. This wouldn't be the first time we've seen signs of the occult in Navezgane, and it likely won't be the last. Either by cover of night or under the facade of temporary storage, human corpses were delivered directly to Pete's abode. They were processed and stored along with the pork and beef and tucked away from the prying public eye. You pay the right people the right amount of money not to ask questions, you can make most anything happen. So, Pete indulged in the taboo with the wealthy and strange of Navezgane, secretly feasting on the dead of the area meant to be cremated or buried. With the casket closed as it's lowered into the ground, who would ever know? When the ashes were delivered, how could the recipients ever tell they weren't the ashes of their loved one? Upon secrecy and cruelty, Pete assembled himself a clientele of the occult, living above and running his butchery under the noses of all of his neighbors. All who weren't involved, that is. When the bombs dropped, when the zombies began to roam, Pete was already prepared. When you cater to the rich and twisted, you hear their whispers of the end times. You make the necessary arrangements. And given his twisted side hustle, I'm assuming Pete had half this stuff lying around anyway. So, as the world plummeted into chaos around him, Pete continued to dine on his favorite dish. He hunkered down in his fortress home, possibly for years. But in the end, the horde gets everyone, one way or another. In this case, let's hope that's true. Let's hope that Pete is among the undead trapped in the secret nightmare of Butcher Pete's. lest we run into him ourselves in the wild lands of Navezgane. But until then, and until next time, thanks for watching.